Hello everybody, happy Monday. We're going live today with Michali as usual to discuss a question that's been posted actually on the AMA. So I just posted an AMA, a really good question came in and we're going to address it. So we're just going to wait for some of you to show up and for Michali of course. Hello Michali, thank you for joining so quickly. Hello Rafael, thank you for joining. How do I do this? Here we go. Should I put this back?
Hi.
Good to see you. I moved myself back, but I'm still half cut off. Let's see if this is better.
I know I'm also kind of orienting myself.
Okay. All right. Good to
Nice
see you. Monday. All right.
Happy
so
Monday.
Question comes from the AMA. So Parents don't accept my healing journey. They keep on asking the same annoying questions, and I need to reassure them. So I thought this was a great question in general, but I also thought it was a great question for this time of year when we're going to be spending more time with family. And the chance that even if this is not something you typically struggle with, you might struggle with this more during this time of the year because you're surrounded by family that might not know the most tactful thing to say. So I wanted to address that one. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, this is a really tough question. I have a number of thoughts about it, but again, I always like to caution people, please take it, with a grain of salt. I don't know what this person's parents are like. So if we were to we would have to make some assumptions in order to answer this question. If we were to assume, for example, that this person's parents, struggle, to be healthy or to have healthy boundaries or whatever, then the guidance I would give is different than if this person's parents, are regular, decent people, might need a little bit of support when it comes to understanding how to respect boundaries. But if they're spoken to in the appropriate way at appropriate time, then they can respect boundaries. I'm going to go for the easier one and just go for the latter. Okay. I think that a lot of times where there's silence, there's room for misunderstanding. And I think that people can feel all kinds of negative feelings from their parents because they're filling in the gaps of silence, or they're seeing the questions and interpreting them in a certain way. And I think it's really hard to be objective. And I think that it's really helpful to have a therapist to create some objectivity here, because it's very possible that parents might be asking these annoying questions because that's their way of showing care and concern. And they don't know another way, or they might need your guidance to learn how to ask questions in a way that makes you feel supported and cared for. So I would caution the person that the intention might be there, even if the action doesn't best make us feel the most supported. So then comes the part okay, well then how do I teach my parents what I need to feel support and care? And I think that it will warrant a conversation. And I say this all the time in my Instagram posts, it's probably going to warrant multiple conversations. To say, look, I just want to share with you about my healing journey. And I've noticed that you've been asking me this question a lot. What's up with that, right? And just kind of really hearing them out. And before reacting to what they're saying, make sure that you're mirroring and reflecting back to them what you think you've heard to make sure that there's no misunderstanding. Right. And make sure that you're really, really hearing them. And then after you fully heard them and you reflected back to them what you've heard them say, then share with them using I statements what it's like for you and what you would prefer, right? So you can say, so I'm hearing you say that you asked me this question because you generally forget, or and you feel so bad that you forget. You wish you didn't forget, but that's just what happens if you're completely honest. Maybe, if we're completely honest, what?
I'm thinking similar to what you were saying, the question might be covering, it might be because they forget, there's so many different things, but kind of like you're saying, giving them that space, it might also be because that question is really covering up for another question that they want to ask, but they're too afraid to ask, right?
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to bring a conversation up, because then you're walking around feeling like my parents hate me or they don't love me, they don't care about me. I mean, while they're thinking we can't access our son or we can't access our daughter and they seem so closed off and upset with us all the time, and we don't know why. And so we're going to walk on eggshells around that, right? So it could be, it's usually a combination of factors, right? Not every parent, even if they're not the healthiest, are out to get their children or hate their children, right? So usually it's a lack of, what another person just commented about, like it usually reflects a huge lack of awareness. And so then how do you create awareness? Dialogue, talking. Over and over and over again.
Right.
And learning how to do that might require therapy, right? Where, this person learns, like, how do I engage in conversations with people that have little awareness? But essentially is what I said, first sharing what you've observed, not what you felt, but what you observed, reflecting back what you hear, asking if there's anything else that they're missing, and then sharing from a place of I feel kind of statements, what it's like for you, and saying, I like to frame things as positively as possible and leave room for assumptions that are judging, the other person favorably. So saying, I'm sure you didn't mean it this way, right? Giving a lot of space for them to be good people instead of evil people. What I'm feeling is just really sad, or that I feel alone. I feel like unknown. And I don't know if this is something you can give to me or not, right? Again, creating space. This is something I need to feel supported, and I actually have a hard time when I'm asked that question. Repetitive questions. I'm sure you don't mean it. I just wanted to share with you that's kind of what it feels like for me. What do you think? And then once they understand, then you kind of go into like solutions and problem solving. Okay, how do we make sure that everyone feels heard and taken care of, right? If the parents want to express concern, if I'm getting annoyed at how they're expressing concern, what can we do differently so everyone feels on the same page?
Right. And like that reminds me of the questioner said, I feel like I need to keep reassuring them. So instead of like taking the reassurance route, you want to take like the conversation route. Like instead of like, it sounds like there's this cycle going on, and somebody actually wrote about a cycle. You need to break the cycle. I'm not sure if that's what you what you were referring to, but I think it's pretty like poignant here to say, like, the parents being perceived as annoying, child is saying I keep telling you the same answers, or I have to keep repeating myself and reassure you. That might not be what the parent's trying to get. If we're saying it's a healthier dynamic, and it might be, instead of reassurance, why don't we have this open conversation? Now, if it's an unhealthier dynamic, I want to touch upon that for a minute, just because there's a good chance it is an unhealthier dynamic where parents is really not understanding, and this child can't get understanding from the parents. And you're kind of feeding the parent with reassurance, but it's not enough. It's almost like an OCD, and like the more you reassure it, the more it grows and festers. So,
and it's not a child's job to reassure their parents, right? It's not any person's job to reassure another human being. It's something that's nice to offer someone you're in a relationship with, but it's not your job, right? Even a spouse, right? Like, I can't expect my husband to constantly reassure me. That's not his job. It makes me feel really good as a partner. It makes me feel cared about, but it's not, again, it can't be an expectation of me to have of him, right? And I feel the same as parents, right? There's an enmeshment, which means that there is a blurring of boundaries. If a child feels like they have to reassure the parents, I saw something on Instagram which I loved, and I'm sure it's been replicated many times, where someone said, people pleasers really are parent pleasers.
I've seen that,
right? And I love it. I love it. And I think that instead, I love what you said, like, instead of offering them reassurance, offer them conversation. Now, you're saying, what happens if the conversation doesn't go so well, right?
Or they're not in the space that they're not healthy enough for you to have a conversation, that you can predict with fear enough certainty that they're not healthy enough. It's not a healthy enough dynamic to have a conversation. So then what can you do instead of constant reassurance, I guess? Like, what would you say is, like, I have something in my mind, which is just to kind of have like a one-liner that you say constantly, so that they know there's like that stability there, so whether it's like, I'm doing the best I can, mom, thank you for trusting me, something like that, something that leaves very little room for like comeback, or something that floats your boat, kind of like in the relationship,
I love that, the one-liner, and just, repeating it over and over and over again. I love using humor. I don't know if this person has a sense of humor or not, but, I personally would lean into it and say, I'm just as screwed up as ever, or like, something like, it's like, please help me. I don't know what to do with myself. Just like really digging into it
I like
and
that.
getting
I
a
like
laugh,
that.
because
Depending on the
humor,
parents also.
depending on your own sense of humor and,
Exactly. Like if the parents
what
gonna
your
go
own
like take a
internal
few.
dialogue
Yeah.
is. Right. I can do it because I don't really believe that about myself. If a person's believing that about
Correct.
themselves, then you have to do something that is not going to hurt you.
Right, and also you have to make sure that the parent is not going to believe it either, because you don't necessarily want to cause them more pain than they're already in. So, like, if they're going to go start thinking that now they have to like take 1,000 caballos on themselves and like who knows what because like you're really doing terribly, you don't want to do that either.
So,
So,
so here's where I feel a little bit differently. I think that it's on the parents. Like, if they feel like they have to take 10,000 Kabbalahs instead of engaging in a dialogue with a child, it's on them. It's not the child, right?
I hear you totally, but I wouldn't use if the humor is going to land in a way that's not accepted as humor to the parent, then I wouldn't necessarily
Right.
recommend the
That
humor.
I'm with you
Only,
on.
yeah, I'm only saying about the humor. I'm saying like I wouldn't, like you said, I thought like a great piece of humor, which is like, I'm just as messed up as ever. If the parent's going to take that as like a joke and recognize like back off and like give them space, great job. If they're going to take it as
Yeah.
like, oh my God, they're really messed up, then, might not want to take that route. I mean, I wouldn't personally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you're right. You have to know your parents and you have
yeah,
to know yourself.
correct.
And this in no way can put you down. It has to be truly humor.
Correct.
But I think the other piece is like really looking at patterns that you've had in your life and being super honest with yourself. Again, it helps to have a therapist as a support with this to just make sure you're being objective. But looking at patterns of like, why do you think your parents cannot engage in a dialogue? Is it a story you're telling yourself about your parents that might not be true? Or is it that your parents have consistently through action shown that they're really unhealthy or that they cannot show up for you in this way, right? And I think it takes another party to be able to get to a conclusion with that. But I think ultimately, if let's say this person does all that work and does these check-ins with more objective people, and the conclusion is that the parents are more on the toxic side, then it comes down to creating really, really healthy boundaries and
Right.
saying, thank you for your concern. I'm not up for discussing it right now. Thank you for your concern. I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Anyway, how was your vacation the other day, right?
Right.
So making a boundary and then going on to another topic. We do this with toddlers all the time. It's empathy and distraction, right? So I would just, repeat it. And again, if they can't honor that boundary and then they start attacking us, there's no mitzvah to stay in a conversation or stay around people that are verbally attacking us. So I would just, very lovingly remove myself from the situation, say, I have to go right now, and kind of leave it at that. And then keep doing that consistently.
Right. I love that. And I love that you said though to like give the parents an extra like the benefit of the doubt in the sense on like by working through a professional to see if you could have a conversation. And like just a point on that, like the conversation we spoke about earlier was like this whole beautiful conversation. It doesn't have to be that way, meaning it can be more of a limited conversation. But it's still a conversation versus like this like patching reassurance and like kind of not dealing with the issue at hand. So if you're able to have any form of like an adult conversation with this parent or parents or authority figures or whoever it is that's kind of like being a nuisance but coming from a good place type of thing, then that's the path you want to take, which I appreciate you kind of like emphasizing that it doesn't have to be that they're like on your level of like emotional vibrancy and like you can have this great conversation.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily either or either, right? Like just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, it doesn't have to be that they're emotionally somewhat attuned or intelligent versus they're toxic, right? And you have to stay away from them, right? It can be what you said, like there are limitations, and then it's up to this person who's going to have to do a lot of their own grief work about what they wish their parents were that they are not and what they can't give them, and then also accept those limitations with love, right? Sometimes when we do our own grief work and we let go of the parents we wished we had, then we're actually doing the biggest favor to ourselves, because then it allows us to be open to the love that our parents can give us. And their love might look like asking annoying questions, but all of a sudden those questions transform from annoying to, you know what, I actually feel cared about, because this is I'm translating that in my mind as I love you and I'm worried about you.
Right.
So again, I don't know these parents, so I don't want to put,
but I think we covered like all different types of parents in this conversation.
I
And I love
hope
that,
so.
like, it doesn't have to be either or, even without, meaning it could be that you have a conversation and you use strong boundaries. Like, it doesn't have to be like, there's place for like every form of permutation here, and you need to like trust yourself and hopefully an authority or a professional in your life to help you navigate through this. But I think the concept of like opting for a conversation on some level as your primary go-to, and then going to like boundaries in addition to that, or in lieu of that, if you know that that conversation is not possible, definitely covers your bases. And now that it's like before the Yom Tovim, I think that this is like a great time before it becomes crazy hectic, and you know, this might come up for people in different forms and different like variants. I think that now is a good time before people are crazy busy to have this conversation with those significant others that you might be spending time with, or might, you know, be meeting somewhere amongst other people. Instead of letting it be something that triggers you, you can be proactive about it. Have, you know, go out for coffee or just have a phone call while you're driving one day to work and be like, hey, I know this is something that comes up often. Can we speak about this? So I think
I
that's
love that. I love that. Yeah. I think that's a great idea, just the proaction. And I think that this whole theme is basically, by the way, just it's like under the category of what we call collaborative problem solving, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what it comes down to.
Okay, amazing. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Michali, for your wisdom as usual.
Thank you,
And
you too.
thank you for the questioner. It was a great question, and we shall see you next week.
Bye.
Have a good one. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.